You ever have one of those moments when you realize just how far people will go to flex authority they don't actually have? Because let me tell you, what happened to me started with a simple wooden ramp and turned into a showdown so outrageous it felt like something straight out of a Netflix drama. It was early spring, the air still sharp enough that morning stung your lungs, and I had just finished building a modest but sturdy ramp for my front porch. Nothing flashy, nothing extravagant. Just a safe way for my dad, who's a veteran and has limited mobility after a hip replacement, to get in and out of my house without struggling upstairs. It was built with my own hands, leveled, treated, and well within code. But in the world of HOA rules, logic doesn't matter, appearances do. And in walked Karen, our HOA president, hair sprayed stiff, lips pursed like she was sucking on lemons, clipboard tucked under her arm like it was the Constitution itself. She didn't even knock on my door that first morning. She just stood in my driveway, glaring at the ramp like it was a personal insult, then scribbled something furiously onto her pad. I opened the door and said, "Morning, Karen, can I help you?" And she turned with that smirk that every HOA horror story seems to come with. "This structure," she said, pointing at my ramp, "is unapproved. It must be removed within 48 hours or you'll be fined $500 per day." At first I laughed, thinking it had to be some kind of misunderstanding. "It's a wheelchair ramp," I said slowly, like she didn't hear herself. "It's not a deck, not a pool, not some neon paint job. It's accessibility." But she didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned in closer and whispered like she was delivering the final blow. "It doesn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. We have rules for a reason." I wish I could tell you I stayed calm, but my jaw dropped. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about control. I reminded her that under federal law, accessibility accommodations are protected, but she just waved me off like I was quoting fairy tales. "If you had wanted this approved, you should have submitted an application months in advance," she snapped. "You can't just do whatever you want." My blood boiled, but I knew shouting back wouldn't solve anything, so I pulled out my phone and started recording. Her face instantly stiffened, but I caught her on camera saying the words that would later haunt her. "This ramp is a violation, and I will personally see to it that it is gone by the end of the week." That video would go viral later, but at the time it just felt like proof in case things escalated. Spoiler, they did. 2 days later, I came home from work to find a bright orange sticker slapped onto the ramp, screaming, "Violation, remove immediately!" My dad sat inside looking defeated, like he'd done something wrong just by needing help to get into the house. That was the moment something snapped in me. It wasn't about fines or rules anymore. It was about dignity. You don't humiliate someone who served this country, who sacrificed his body, just because you want your cul-de-sac to look like a Stepford brochure. So I lawyered up. My attorney took one look at the video and laughed, saying, "She has no idea what storm she just called down." He drafted a letter citing the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Fair Housing Act, and state accessibility codes, and warned the HOA that attempting to remove or obstruct the ramp would result not only in a lawsuit, but in potential civil rights violations. I thought that would be enough to scare her off, but Karen doubled down. She called an emergency HOA meeting, rallied a few of her loyalists, and plastered flyers around the neighborhood, claiming my ramp was bringing down property values. Imagine that, someone's ability to walk into their own home, framed as a financial liability. My neighbors started buzzing. Some whispered support when Karen wasn't around. Others avoided me completely, and a few sided with her, parroting nonsense about uniformity. But what Karen didn't realize was that when you push too far, sometimes you push the wrong person. One of those flyers somehow ended up in the hands of a local reporter. She called me, asked if I'd be willing to talk, and I hesitated until my dad looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Son, I fought for freedom. Don't let them take it from us here." That was all I needed. The story went live online. Headline blazing, HOA orders veterans handicap ramp torn down. Overnight, the article exploded. Shares, comments, outrage pouring in from every corner of the internet. And then the phone calls started. Advocacy groups, disability rights organizations, even a state senator's office reached out. Suddenly, this wasn't just my fight, it was a spotlight. And here's where the twist comes in. Less than 24 hours after that article broke, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. A calm, authoritative voice said, "This is Governor's office. We'd like to visit your property tomorrow morning." I swear I thought it was a prank. But sure enough, the very next day, Two black SUVs pulled up to my curb, reporters already gathering like vultures on fresh news, and out stepped the governor himself. He shook my hand, greeted my father with a salute that left the old man misty-eyed, and turned to face the cameras. "Accessibility," he said, "is not negotiable. It is a right, and no homeowners association, no matter how powerful they think they are, can strip that away." The crowd erupted. My dad smiled in a way I hadn't seen since before his surgery. And Karen, she was there too, standing on the edge of the crowd with her clipboard hanging uselessly at her side, her face the color of chalk. The governor didn't stop at words. He ordered a full review of HOA practices in the state, citing my case as a prime example of overreach. That week, my attorney filed suit, and suddenly the HOA board scattered like cockroaches in the light. Neighbors who once whispered in secret now came forward publicly, admitting they'd been bullied by Karen's tactics too. Petty fines, threats of foreclosure, intimidation, all spilling into the open, now that someone had finally stood up to her. The lawsuit turned into a class action. The ramp stayed, the fines were erased, and the HOA ended up paying damages not just to me, but to several other residents. Karen, she lost her presidency, then her board seat, then her credibility. Last I heard, she sold her house and moved out quietly, without a farewell meeting, without her precious clipboard. And me, I kept the ramp. I kept my dignity. But more importantly, I kept the reminder that sometimes the smallest battles, the ones over a wooden ramp, a strip of lawn, a mailbox color, are the ones that expose the biggest truths about power, control, and what people will risk to feel important. You want to know the craziest part? My dad still uses that ramp every single day. And every time his wheels roll smoothly up to the porch, he says, "Guess we won that war after all." And maybe he's right. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about a ramp or an HOA, or even Karen. It was about drawing a line in the sand and saying dignity is not negotiable, and no self-appointed clipboard warrior gets to take it away. So the next time you see someone standing up to a petty rule, remember this story, because you never know when the fight on your porch could turn into a battle that reaches all the way to the governor's office.